The main clash took place on May 2nd at Hromadske Street, on the Cathedral Square, where Euromaidan supporters faced off against ultras football fans and supporters of anti-Maidan. Between them stood a police cordon. 6 people were killed and hundreds more were wounded. Later that day, the opposing sides clashed at Kulikovo Pole, as Euromaidan activists attempted to clean up a camp of pro-Russian activists. Those remaining hid in the house of the trade union and defended themselves from there. The building was eventually engulfed in flames, as the parties threw Molotov cocktails at one another. 42 people died from fire, carbon monoxide, and injuries sustained from falling.
That was more than 3 years ago, but those guilty in the tragedy have not been punished. Some participants in these events have fled to Russia or the occupied Donbas, but most remain in Ukraine. There are 6 criminal proceedings in the May 2 case.
In the case of May 2nd, investigations have been conducted into the following episodes: mass clashes on Hromadske Street and Cathedral Square, setting fire to the House of Trade Union at Kulikovo Pole, anti-Maidan attacks at the March of Ultras football fans and Euromaidan activists, the inaction of rescuers and beginning of the fire at the House of Trade Unions, and the inaction of Odesa police. Key figures: 20 members of anti-Maidan were accused of organizing mass riots in the city center. Euromaidan supporter Sergei Hodyak is accused of killing one and injuring another anti-Maidan guard. Former head of Odesa's public security police, Dmitro Fuchedji, is accused of organizing mass unrest and official negligence. Former head of the regional police, Petro Lutsuk, is accused of professional negligence and the planned fraud wave. Former head of the regional department of Odessa Ministry of Emergencies, Volodymyr Bodolana, is accused of inaction in the first moments of the fire at the House of the Trade Unions.
These things are not investigated quickly, and such cases take months to be heard in court. We have to understand that investigations and trials take many years, maybe even 10 years.
Now the situation in Odessa remains tense. The city has quite active support for pro-Russian forces, but conflict between them and nationalist organizations is not as intense and arises mainly on symbolic dates or anniversaries. The situation is much softer than it was 3 years ago, but the conflict has not stabilized. It continues. In any case, resistance and opposition can be divided in 2 types. The first is the work you have seen in the pictures of May 2nd and 9th. The second type is disguised. They work as sabotage groups. Here, the SBU is very active and we're doing everything in our power to help them. That's to say that those who are screaming and spitting at the police are wrong.
On May 2nd, the 3rd anniversary of the tragedy of Kulikovo Pole, several thousand people came to honor the memory of the dead. But some used the event as a platform for political speeches. The next incident took place on the Victory Day, May the 9th, when flowers were laid at the side of the Eternal Flame. For the events, participants gathered for the March of the Eternal Regiment, but were prohibited from wearing St. George's ribbons and other Soviet symbols. Regular clashes occurred between them and right sector groups, which were broken up by the police.
Objectively speaking, the majority of people in Odessa don't care who is in power. Let's be honest. Odessa has had every regime, every power in its history, and they are well accustomed to them all. As long as there is a Ukrainian state with its security forces in power, its army, and thousands of people who have gone through the war in the east, in the Ukrainian armed forces, Odessa will remain Ukrainian. It will celebrate Ukrainian holidays. It might muddy the waters on May 9th with the March of the Eternal Regiment, but that's all.